Let me pose a question to you. Think about a big long-term goal of yours. Maybe it's a 3-month-long vacation. Perhaps buying a yacht or vacation home is on your bucket list. A lavish retirement, maybe? Whatever it may be, how much do you think it'll cost in 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years? While we think of the short-term targets we have for ourselves, we need to keep in mind that there is a silent money thief that hides in broad daylight within our economy: inflation. It has made international news in recent years and is the constant talk among economists, dog walkers, journalists, mechanics, politicians, and everyone in between. It can also be the thief that takes away your goals and dreams for your investments. What is inflation, and how does it affect investments? Inflation is the increase in prices over a given period. It's the overall general upward trend of prices for goods and services. Something that may cost $5 today might cost you $6 tomorrow. There are many different variables that can cause inflation to change. Sometimes there might be a war in a region that reduces the supply of a particular resource. Maybe there are issues with a particular supply chain holding up production. Maybe a particular resource is starting to run dry. A surge in demand can also drive up inflation, such as an increased demand for gas or toilet paper. Whatever it may be, or what it's caused by, inflation will drive up the price of a particular good or service. Again, from earlier, your $5 coffee today might end up costing you $6 next year, if the price of coffee or labor goes up due to increased demand, decreased supply, or a combination of both. While we all feel the inflation when our everyday purchases increase in price, it can also affect our returns on our investments. If you invest in a product that earns a low rate of return and inflation surpasses the interest rate, you won't make any money. You'll end up losing more that way. That's why it's important to consider inflation risk when you create your investment plan. That 3-month vacation that might cost you $10,000 in 1 year might cost you $14,000 in 3 years, all thanks to inflation. The worst part, inflation isn't fixed. It fluctuates year to year, and even month to month, depending on your country. The fluctuations of inflation can have serious implications on your investment return. Periods of high inflation can eat away at your fixed interest rate savings accounts and term deposits, putting you at risk of failing your goals. How inflation eats away at returns. Most people have the misconception that if they park their funds in an investment that offers a fixed rate of return, they will get that return guaranteed. It's an easy mistake to make, as different financial institutions that offer such investments market them in a way that seem nearly risk-free, with the only risk to expect is the defaulting of the institution. The reality is, however, there is more than just one kind of risk when it comes to investing in fixed-rate investments. Inflation can seriously jeopardize your returns, especially in the long term. Here's an example. Let's say you invested in a 1-year term deposit at 5% and you invest $10,000. At the end of the year, you earned $500 on your investment and you walked away with $10,500. This is what we call the nominal return. It's just a simple flat return, not accounting for inflation. Now, let's take inflation into consideration. We have the same 5% term deposit for 1 year, but we add in a 3% inflation rate for the year. When we take that into consideration, your return isn't 5%, but only 2%. Yes, you're still making money, and you still earn that $500, but that return won't take you as far, as inflation has eaten up nearly $300 in increased living costs. Now, nominal returns are fine in short-term investing, as they aren't affected by inflation that much. What we need to be concerned about is longer-term investments, as our returns will be greatly affected by inflation. When you expand this out, it's very easy to see how your investments won't look as impressive when inflation is taken into consideration. So, we know that if our return is above inflation, we can make money. But what happens when inflation is more than the return? Let's say we saw the same term deposit of 5% for 1 year. However, inflation creeps up to a staggering 7%. While your investment may have increased, its ability to purchase things at maturity is reduced. Instead of earning 5%, you've lost 2% thanks to inflation. See how inflation can put you in a difficult position to meet your goals? This is why it's important to consider the inflation risk when investing. Protecting your investments from inflation. So now that I've scared you into thinking that your returns are never safe, let's investigate different ways we can mitigate some of the inflation risk. The best way to hedge against inflation risk is to diversify your portfolio. Don't have all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. If you have a portfolio with different investments that offer different potential rate of returns, you will offer protection to your investments from inflation. There are countless mutual funds and ETFs that invest in both in fixed income and equities, offering you decent returns and a decent hedge against inflation. Be sure to speak to a licensed financial planner about your needs, wants, risk tolerances, and time horizon to make sure you're in the best product for you. Stocks and mutual funds aren't the only way to hedge against inflation. Assets such as real estate and art have become more and more popular in recent years. Housing prices, however, have skyrocketed everywhere around the world, especially in Canada, where I'm from. If you got in early enough, you could have a house that's appreciated faster than the rate of inflation. If you didn't get in early, well, maybe you can find a gem of a deal somewhere, although that's a video for another day. Commodities are another potential option for diversifying your portfolio. Gold in particular is an asset that tends to hold its value even over long periods of time. While other commodities might fluctuate rapidly, gold tends to be more stable and is typically viewed as a safe haven of sorts for those who want to park their funds. While it's not something I recommend, crypto can also be an option for those that can tolerate the risk. While volatile, Bitcoin has seen tremendous returns over the last decade or so. If you bought some in 2009 and haven't sold any of it, you could be worth millions by now. There are other cryptocurrencies available, but none have seen the popularity and relative stability of Bitcoin, if you can call it stable. Again, be sure to do your research and find out what's best for you. If you're unsure on what to invest in, I have an ebook on my Gumroad called Investing 101. It gives you a crash course in investing, how to approach it, and different options to consider. I'll be sure to put a link in the description below. Important considerations. Now, I did throw in a bunch of different options for you to consider when it comes to investing to protect against inflation. While all these options are viable, it's important to remember that not all investments are going to be right for you. If you have a short time horizon, or if the idea of losing your principal scares you, going into Bitcoin isn't going to be a good idea for you. You might just be better off taking on the inflation risk and purchase fixed rate term deposits. If you have a long time horizon, and you welcome potential growth, fixed rate term deposits are not going to work for you, and you may want to consider assets with more growth potential. Regardless of what you want to do, you want to make sure you sit down with a licensed professional to discuss your options. They'll help you decide what's right for you. Another thing to consider is your time horizon. If you need the funds in the short term, inflation won't be much of a risk to you, so it's something that you shouldn't worry too much about. That said, investing is a long-term game, and planning for the short term with all of your investments just isn't wise. Thirdly, you cannot eliminate risk from your portfolio. There is always going to be some kind of risk you are exposed to, whether it's inflation, market risk, interest risk, currency risk, liquidity risk, or some other form. You can never escape it. All you can do is to mitigate the risk to the best of your ability. Finally, you'll want to subscribe to the channel to learn more about wealth building and different tips for investing in the long term. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.